Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow guest,
Mr. Solis.
Alright, so we are back. How have you been, sir? It's been a while since our last recording.
I guess that was TLC?
Yes.
Before Christmas. So it's been a January. Goodness, hasn't it been a January, Jack?
Yeah.
But I'm fine. Second semester is fully underway. We're all virtual, all semester, and helping my teachers do what they can with what they have for their students. All the meanwhile, trying the old weight loss guy, trying to draw more.
Yeah.
Business as usual. Staying positive, testing negative. How about you?
I've been well. As the viewers have known from past episodes, I started school about the first week of January, I believe, and so I've just been keeping up with that. Just mainly been taking up a lot of my time, but here and there I try and find time for some art, or I recently ordered a manga set from one of my favorite animes, so it should be coming tomorrow. So hopefully, whenever I have spare time, do some reading there too as well.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've been doing really well. And it's been really odd going almost like the whole month of January without something big in terms of wrestling.
Yeah, I had Wrestle Kingdom in the beginning of January. 2 nights, and I think it was a really successful pair of nights and full of, really memorable action. Yeah, I know what you mean. WWE really set themselves up for set the bar real high with the drawn out build to Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird because I don't keep up with the weekly shows, but I at least check in to see what storylines are being built, so I'm at least knowledgeable for the pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of them, it was really weird because you couldn't tell what was going to actually be built up for the pay-per-view and what wasn't. Everyone thought Lashley versus Riddle was going to happen on the pay-per-view, or Big E versus Apollo Crews for the pay-per-view, but those didn't end up happening.
Yeah, and how about being strung along thinking Adam Pearce was going to challenge for the Universal Championship?
Oh, yeah. There was just so much weird build, and then they throw in the swerve. It was okay, Owens is coming back, which, for some people they might have been another match, but the thing is, it's really building up Owens. Obviously, Owens, I think is one of the type of guys that you can always just kind of throw into the main event scene and it will make sense. But they were kind of just kind of continuing to build him up as this main event guy, and especially credible challenger.
At his peak before now, he was sort of the prize fighter, which was big matches all the time, sort of after the title and after the money. And, for his family. Even as a heel, he was I'm here to make a bunch of money doing what I do best. Nowadays, it's a different character, one that never says die, and one that will put his body in inexplicable harm to do what he's got to do.
Yeah, and then so we also got the build for Drew versus Goldberg, which again it was really difficult seeing where they were going because some people thought it was going to be Keith Lee versus Drew or something, but that was a good build. They've slowly been building that Raw Women's Tag match, which I guess we'll start. It was on the kickoff show, and it actually caught me by surprise because I just tuned into the kickoff show just to see if anything was going to be announced or anything. And then when I saw that they were pulling up the match, I was originally watching on my phone. Once I saw the match was coming up, I transferred over to TV.
That's funny. I was also watching the kickoff on my phone. I was driving home from my parents' house, and I said, I'll just put it on the pre-shows, listen to it in the background, them hyping people and hyping matches. And yeah, I heard the bell, or the entrances, and I went, wait, oh wow.
Yeah, I was really surprised because like I didn't remember this being like announced as like the kickoff show or anything, but it made sense once I thought about it because usually the kickoffs are only like 30 minutes, but this one was like an hour, and I was like, okay, it makes sense. They need something to fill in at least 15, 20 minutes on the kickoff.
It also made sense because most every participant of this match was going to be in the Women's Royal Rumble. So
Right.
you needed to put some time between this match and their appearance there.
Yeah, but so with what you were able to see of it, what did you think of it?
So this is Asuka, the Raw Women's Champion Asuka, and Charlotte Flair defending their women's tag team championships against the people they beat for them, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. I enjoyed parts of this match. I guess I'm okay with Shayna and Nia still being a team. It's like, they were thrown together, but at least they're acting like... how often do we see people lose titles, Jack, and then forget about them?
Yeah.
So that's nice that, there's follow-up there.
Mm-hmm.
The match was a match until, like, the end. I really don't want to get to the end unless there's other things that you wanted to point out.
Nothing really. I thought it was a really decent match, but again, like as you're kind of alluding to, there was nothing really like special, but like it was still a really good match or a decent
I'm not
match.
okay with Asuka, the Raw Women's Champion, being literally like the fifth wheel of this Charlotte story.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, they really turned the heat up on this Charlotte story that they're telling.
Yeah. So Jackson Baszler win due to Ric Flair and Lacey Evans interference.
And interference only begins to paint the portrait they were working on Sunday because is it Lacey's music or Rick's music that hits?
I think it was Rick's.
Isn't that just the funniest thing? Where can you imagine Charlotte Flair in the midst of this fight with these two brutish women, and she hears her father's music and she just has to think, why? Why? But I think you're right. I think he comes out and waves Lacey in. And what's Lacey Evans doing, Jack?
So I believe the ref gets distracted by Nia Jax, and so Charlotte's trying to get the figure eight in because like she sees her dad and she does like the typical babyface thing where they get distracted by the heel, but then they kind of try and get back into the match.
Yes.
And seeing this, Lacey pulls Charlotte out pulls her arm so that she can't get the figure eight in.
Right.
But then Charlotte attacks her, and so you think, oh, maybe that's the end, and like Charlotte goes back to attacking Jax, and you think, oh, they're gonna find a way to win. But that's when you see Ric Flair slip Lacey Evans something, and that's when she punches Charlotte right in the face, and then Baszler tags in Jax, who hits the leg drop on Charlotte to get the pin.
Mm-hmm. So, like, this could have ended in a lot of different places, and it would have been annoying and frustrating. If it had just been the music and the walking out. Like we've seen a lot of baby faces get duped by.
Yeah.
That's one thing. If it had just been pull her arms, cause a distraction, and then they lose, that would have also been frustrating. But it was all of it. And Rick being super complicit. He handed Lacey Evans what looked like Nux or something to load her hand. And she knocks Charlotte Flair out upside down from outside the ring. And it's not even enough. We can't even pin Charlotte then because we got a leg dropper then. But just so, like, they just piled on. And guess what, Jack? They're going to pile on later, too.
Yeah, and it's funny that they did all that for Charlotte to really build upon this storyline. And you mentioned earlier how you don't like what they're doing with Asuka. It was like Asuka got taken out just because she got thrown over the announce table.
Right.
And she was out for like 5-7 minutes while all that went down.
Yeah, she doesn't, she doesn't have quite the prominent role in this story. I mean, it's what I should be thankful for is this Charlotte story that doesn't have anything to do with the title. Actually, they got a title off of her. Yeah. So, that's neat. So, like, what they're building to, like the Charlotte versus Lacey thing, it doesn't need a title. It's just personal vindication there, hatred, betrayal. Neat.
Yeah, and they're trying to build the Raw Women's Division, which it really needs right now because compared to NXT and SmackDowns, it is the worst of the three.
I would second that. Yes.
Yeah, and when I was telling when the Bad Bunny performance happened, my dad wanted to go back and watch like the end of this tag match, and I believe it was here and a little bit of the Rumble that I was telling him, the Raw Women's Division is kind of lacking compared to the other two, and I think you could kind of say the fault of that is Elimination Chamber last year, where I was saying, I'm like, yes, Baszler is supposed to be like this super prominent fighter within the main event scene of the women's division.
Yeah.
But when you throw her in there with 5 other supposed what are supposed to be contenders for this top belt, and they get destroyed the way she did, it's kind of tough now for Asuka who's also supposed to be like a top, top rank in the women's division on Raw next to Baszler and Charlotte. It's like, well, at that point, who do you throw at her that would be realistic,
Well, we've got 30 women vying for that opportunity a little later because we are now fully in the 2021 Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and we start off with Goldberg versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE title.
They literally have the same problem with Drew as they have with Asuka. Who can we throw at him? We've spent so little time building up people to throw at him that they gotta go in the garage, dust off that box that says Goldberg, and go, alright, I think he's good for one more.
Yeah, and it was funny because my dad beforehand literally said, I think this match is going to go about 3 minutes. Yes. And it ended up being about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's kind of like you're saying, the fault of their own really with Raw. It seems like with their men and women's champion is really struggling to find contenders.
Mm-hmm.
And, it kind of started off strong, like Drew had Rollins, then he had Lashley, and then Ziggler, and then Orton.
Yep.
And then once they got to Orton, that's when they realized, well, if we haven't beat Orton, who are we going with after this? And that's when they stretched out Orton for 3 pay-per-views.
They had Rollins, they had Lashley, they had Orton, they had Orton.
Yeah, and the same happened with Asuka. She started off, they had Jax, but then it ended in a double count-out just to be run back the next Raw. And then you had her face Sasha, which it was like, okay, Sasha's a pretty good opponent. That's high ranking, but then she lost the belt, and then she won it back, and then she had the match with Vega, and then after that it was like, Jackson Baszler are tied up in the tag scene. Zelina's gone now. Charlotte's not here. Becky's not here.
And the characters, they've poured a lot of investment in time and creative and energy. The Fiend and Alexa Bliss are both people that you could feasibly put in that position, but you absolutely shouldn't.
Yeah.
Given all the conundrums that would create.
Yeah. So, luckily, leading up to who would challenge them pay-per-view by pay-per-view, they've struggled. But as you mentioned, seeing both Rumbles, in my eyes, the women's Rumble kind of had more clear-cut winners than the men's, because the men's, it was really difficult to think, who can win and what stories would they go in, because obviously there was picks, but for the men's, I think there was more of a uncertainty as to who would actually win it compared to the women's. But
I agree.
But thankfully, watching both Rumbles, you looked at it and you were like,